Hi, and welcome to Mondays with Marlo. You know, when I was growing up, my favorite person in the world was my grandmother. She was Italian, she sang, she played the drums, she made doll clothes for me. I just loved her. And so today I'm very excited that we have with us an expert on grandmothering. She's going to talk to us about all the questions you have out there about being a grandmother or being a son or a daughter who is seeing your mother in a brand new role. And how great, because Mother's Day is just around the corner, so this is a perfect time to really honor grandmothers and try to get our lives together as grandmothers. So here we are now with Adair. Are you there?
I am here.
Great. Welcome.
Thank you.
We're so happy to have you. You're a real expert. What's the name of your book?
It's called The Granny Diaries.
We've got a lot of fabulous questions for you, and I'm dying to hear the answers. So here we go. This comes in from Eileen. She says, my grandson is 14 months old and he's very attached to his parents. He's affectionate to me when his parents are present. However, he cries if he's left alone with me. How can I get to the point where he feels comfortable being with me without having his parents nearby?
I would say just wait a couple of months. It sounds as if he's at that age where they just have to be around their parents. I think probably in 2 months, 3 months, he'll be diving into his grandmother's arms because he won't have that stranger anxiety. Oh. Not that the grandmother's a stranger, but some kids like to stick close.
Right, but it is as he get a little bit older.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Well, that's encouraging. Here's one from Kate. She says, I have a daughter with a 2.5-year-old baby. I make it a point to come over every week, even though they live 2 hours away, and I spend time with my granddaughter. I'd like to take my granddaughter for a weekend sometime, but is it too soon? How can I ask my daughter about this? I fear she'll say no, and it will be upsetting. Her grandbaby is 2.5 years old.
Right. Yeah, those people in between us and the grandchildren, they're very bristly sometimes. But she might, I would think that the daughter might be ready for a weekend without the 2-year-old. No.
Or maybe just one night rather than...
Or maybe just one night. Just say, I'd love to take the baby for the weekend if you'd like to go somewhere or have a break. It's hard to imagine that somebody would actually, bristle at that kind of an offer. Yeah.
Right. My my sister's daughter, with her first child, she wouldn't let my sister, who was the grandmother of the child and the mother of my niece, take her son in the car. She wouldn't let anybody drive her little boy baby in the car except herself and her husband. And my sister was very frustrated by this because she said to her daughter, I drove you around when you were a baby. Why can't I drive my own? What makes me less safe to drive your child around? And she got over it after a couple of years. But I think for some mothers, new mothers, and especially when it's a first child, they're afraid of the safety a lot of the time.
Oh yeah, the first mothers, they're nervous. By the time the second child rolls around, they'll throw the baby at anybody willing to take them.
This is from Julia. Julia wants to know, how is parenting different this time around than it was when you were raising your children?
Oh, it's a good question. I think in the first place, parenting wasn't a verb then. You didn't do parenting, you were parents. And then back then, kids were expected to follow the adults around, to the dry cleaners or what. And now it seems as if the parents follow the kids around. There are actually even bands that are specially for kids. And also, of course, the world, and this is not universal, but seems to be very child-centric. There's a lot of worry. They don't let the kids out of their sight. I have a 10-year-old nephew, and he gets very nervous if he can't see me, and he's 10. Back then it was what they call free-range parenting. You were not only encouraged to leave your parents' sight, but you were sometimes actively told to.
Also, there seems to be so much planning these days. All my friends who have children, and I see that with my husband's grandchildren, their activities are planned out every step of the way. They have something going on every hour of the day. I remember a lot of time as a child that I was in my room playing records and writing. I wasn't entertained 24 hours a day like the kids seem to be today.
No, my mother never entertained a. She had. I have 6 brothers and sisters, and she never entertained a kid in her life. You know, if you were inside, you were running up the light bill. You know,
Right.
she was. Your job was to get out of her hair.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, and also what really makes the difference is that both parents work, and the grandparents work too.
Right.
So it's, even though everybody is desperate to spend time with the kids, they're also desperate to do their work, and there's always that push and pull.
Here's a good question from Annie. She says, I give my grandchildren, lots of gifts. I spoil them every time I see them. But sometimes I get the feeling that their parents are not too happy about it. Should I be concerned about overindulging my grandchildren?
Well, we all do that. You know, it's supposed to be one of our privileges. I certainly do that. You know, you have this grandparent walking in with a giant dollhouse that has its own septic tank and then the parent has to has to cram it into their tiny little condo. And then the parent has to start giving away the toys, which hurts the grandparents' feelings. So, I would just say keep it small, or that old standby of actually asking the parent what the child needs, as opposed to, you know, another dress. I buy a lot of dresses. On the other hand, it's,
I have 2 stepchildren, 2 step grandchildren. Well, actually, they don't feel like step grandchildren to me because their father is my stepson. But I've known these children since literally the moment they were born, and I'm the godmother to Connor, the oldest. But I'm very, very close to these children, Kenzie and Connor, and I love them dearly, and I feel very much loved by them. And I always do ask their mom. You know, I'm thinking of buying them a cell phone. Should I do that? Is that not a good idea? What about an iTouch? What about a this? And I always ask her, and she tells me what she thinks is appropriate, or she doesn't want them to have a cell phone, or whatever. So why not? You know, why not do it the way their mother wants them to? So I think you should keep the dialogue. What I've learned as a step grandmother is that keep the dialogue going with my daughter-in-law and ask her, you know, is this a good idea? Is this too much? Because I want her. She's raising them to feel a certain way about things and money and so forth, and she guides me so that it's still within what she's trying to raise and how she's trying to raise them.
Yeah, you can even ask.
And that's fine.
You can even ask the kids. You know, what's your mother's position on this, so you don't, aren't contradicting the mother in some way. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and that makes it better all the way around. This is an interesting question from Stephanie. She says, my daughter does not pay much attention to nutrition with her children. She has, they're 8 and 5. Are there any books I can give her? I worry they're eating the wrong food. They're not being raised with proper eating habits. They eat lots of bread, junk food, etc., hardly any vegetables. So are there any books about this that you would suggest for kids?
Well, that is worrying. I think you have to be careful about giving books to your daughter because they tend to be thrown back at you. But there's a book called Stealthy Chef that's it's recipes that ways to sneak good food into meals that the kids really like, and I think the grandmother could get it for herself and then just sort of casually mention to the daughter what she's doing herself. You know, I managed to make something with spinach in it.
Smart.
Yeah, because she can't give it to the daughter because everything we do that directly says you're a bad mother. You know. Well, there.
That's great advice, Adair.
Thank you.
Let's see here. Here's another one from Camille. How much intervening is too much for a grandparent to do? Like when my grandchildren are misbehaving, what measures can I take without upsetting my son or daughter-in-law?
I think it really makes a difference who they're misbehaving with. If they're misbehaving with their parents, then it's their parents' job, and they really don't want you to wade into that. But if they're misbehaving with a grandparent, you set your own rules. It's your own relationship, and you decide what's okay with you. I mean, that's actually not the parents' call. So if you want the kids to sit up straight at dinner, kids are very adjustable. They can be one way with their mother and another way with their grandparent, and go back and forth. But you can't intervene in things that are the parents' domain. You know.
Right. That's very good advice. That's very good advice. Here's another one that's very interesting. This is from Gwen. How do you deal with the grandparent rivalries? From who gives the best gift to who gets the grandkids on the holidays? This is a huge one.
It is. We had to give up. We had to give up Thanksgiving for Christmas, because the kids' grandparents on the other side are Jewish, and so we did some swapping around. But of course, we missed the kids on Thanksgiving. They missed them on Christmas. It's tough. I think it's really good if you could possibly keep a friendly relationship with the other grandparents. Maggie and Ryan's parents are divorced, so it's been a little tougher, but I get along really well with him and with his parents, and I think that really helps, especially with holidays, which are always so fraught. Everybody wants the kids all the time.
And some people put it all together. Demi Moore, who's remarried, some people keep the whole family together. Demi Moore, who is, as you know, divorced from Bruce Willis, who's the father of her three daughters. He's remarried, she's remarried, and Demi has Thanksgiving at her house with Bruce Willis and his wife and their parents and her husband and the daughters. So that I said, wow, that's amazing that you do that. And she said, I want my daughters to have both parents. I don't want to have to separate them. So we're still a family, which I thought was great.
Oh, of course. And I mean, whenever you can expand the number of grown-ups who love the kids.
Right.
It's all to the good. My granddaughters brag that they have 4 bedrooms.
Oh, that's great.
Wherever they go, they're home.
That's so great. That's so great. Here's an interesting question from somebody named Kay. My grandparents were amazing and positive influences in my life, but my children don't have the same kind of relationship with either set of their grandparents. Is it okay to find other grandparent types to fill that role in my kids' lives?
I think it's really smart. We act as, my husband and I are Auntie D and Uncle B to 2 kids who are no relation to us. We call them our niece and nephew, their brother and sister. And we act as their grandparents. We give them presents on every holiday, we do separate things. And sure, the modern family, you often choose who's going to be your family. You just want to make sure that those people are going to stay in that kids' lives, because they have to sort of commit to that.
Yeah, and also there's godparents, because I know that I'm a godmother to a lot of friends' children, and I kind of serve that role too, is recognizing the events in their lives and showing up for different events. That's a very good thing. So you can also depend on your godparents.
It does, yeah. But I think it makes a child secure, and those people, they have pictures of the kids up in their houses. They do a special room for them if they can manage that.
Right.
And so they show the kids that they're there for the duration. Yeah, kids love that.
Here's something from Martha, and she wants to know if there's any tips for step-grandparenting. I have so much love to give my step-granddaughter, but I'm not extremely close with my stepdaughter, so I often feel out of place.
I think, even though some of us are tied by blood to the grandkids and others by marriage, you still are making your own relationship if you have access anyway.
Right.
And that it should make no difference. My husband is a step-grandfather, and Maggie and Ryan were the only ones I ever saw who got him on the floor. He had never seen kids grow from babies before, and he's just gone on them, and it makes absolutely no difference that he's not related to them by blood. He gave himself the name Pepe, and he's...
My grandchildren call me Sittu, which is Lebanese for grandmother. This woman is asking a particular question, a specific question, by saying she's not close to her daughter-in-law, to her stepdaughter, I mean. She's not close to her stepdaughter, so she's not quite sure how to get close to the step-granddaughter. And my advice would be, as a step-grandmother myself, is you build your own relationship. I'm very lucky. My daughter-in-law, I adore her. She's great. But, and she's very grateful for the attention I give her children. But I think that you could, and Adair, you'll tell me if this is right, but it seems to me that you create your own relationship with the grandchild, whether it's a step-grandchild or your blood grandchild.
But you have to get your you have to get your foot in the door
yes.
first. I think I would almost, in that case, maybe take the mother to lunch and just lay it out for her and say, I would really like to have a relationship with these kids. Can you give me some advice? Is there some, just ask her. They love to be asked rather than told.
Right.
And can't think of anybody who would shut down, a heartfelt request like that. It still doesn't mean that you're not on pins and needles or on probation or that it can't be whisked away from you, but you find ways to show how committed you are, and any parent's going to respond, I think.
Right. And also, I think to bring gifts that are about helping the child grow, as opposed to just, I don't know, candy or something, but things that will help them grow. I have noticed, even with the children in my life who are not my stepchildren, but just to bring things that are really age appropriate, to really show that you're trying to help the child have fun and also develop well. I think moms and dads really appreciate that too.
They do. Yeah. But of course the child would like, some silly bands.
Right. Well, you can bring those along. This is interesting. This is from somebody who calls herself Cat Lady. She said, my 10-year-old grandson speaks very disrespectfully to me and my husband. I have tried to talk to my son about this, but he just brushes it off. Is there something that can be done about this?
Oh, I would think so. I don't think it's the father's job to teach his kids how to talk to the grandmother. It's the grandmother herself, who says, if you're disrespecting me, it's a way almost of disrespecting yourself, because I'm your grandmother, and it hurts my feelings. What I do is I leave the room sometimes. I'll say, I guess you want me to go check my email at length. I think that one thing that get kids' attention, if you physically remove yourself and say, I asked you not to call me that, and I'll be back in a minute, and they withdraw. I think it kind of shocks kids, and it means it's something you can do. You're not asking either the father or the son to do anything. You're just saying, these are my boundaries. I'd really like to be treated with respect, and I'm not going to respond if you don't. I'm pretty sure kids would get it pretty fast. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I think we do build our own parameters. That's very good advice.
I think so, yeah.
Here's another one. This is a woman calling herself Storm. My parents insist on trying to control and parent my 12 and 9-year-old sons. I've tried reminding them that I'm the parent, but it doesn't seem to work. How can I get through to them?
That's a tough one. They, we're not, the better grandparents know never to open their mouths at all. I think she's good. I think it's really good for a daughter and her mother to go somewhere when it's less fraught over dinner and just say, what do you expect of this experience? What do you expect a grandparent's role to be? What kind of help can I give you? And just sort of get a sense before something blows up. And then the daughter can say, I really would like to make parental decisions myself.
Right.
And I don't want you ever to discipline the children for me.
Right.
It doesn't mean that people aren't going to still break these boundaries. But, if you can find some less fraught way over a drink to talk about it.
Yeah, and not in front of the kids. Not in front of the children.
Right.
I think you're right.
Or you can just say, you can't come over if you're going to interfere with the way I raise my children. You're not.
Right.
You can't come over.
Right.
Yeah, that's the parent's last weapon.
That's the last one. This is from Patrick. Patrick says, I have a tremendous fear of being completely responsible for my granddaughter. The thought of her sleeping over is still daunting to me. Should I feel guilty for not wanting to take over the responsibility of having my granddaughter overnight at the age of 2, when I realize it'll be easier for me to wait and have her come over when she's older?
Oh, I think lots of people are, it's been a long time since they were around babies or toddlers, and they're not up for it, especially because sometimes a grandchild seems so precious. I think he's perfectly well within his rights just say, I'd like to wait until she's 5 before she sleeps over. It makes me nervous.
Right.
I'm sure that will communicate itself to her. You get to make your own rules and say, this is what I can do and this is what I can't do.
Here's an interesting question from Jeff. Jeff says, the bottom line is I don't get to see my grandson as much as I would like. I'm retired and I'd love to pop over any time my daughter and son-in-law will have me. But it seems to be that the only times I'm invited to see my grandson is when my son-in-law isn't around. So my question is, what do I do when my daughter makes the priority her husband's schedule at the expense of me spending time with my grandson? Uh-oh.
Oh, I'm afraid that's her call. That's, there's, without knowing more about that relationship, I would say there's really not much you can do, but sort of take what the parent has to offer, do your best with it. But I don't think there's really much of anything he can do about where she decides to set her lines. Maybe he can just, develop a very winning personality and try to think of ways to solve her problems for her. I can take them on Wednesdays when you want to take your yoga, or I'll take them to gymnastics.
Right.
Maybe think of what she needs would be helpful.
Well, I think he's feeling jealous.
Of course.
He's feeling jealous that his daughter has chosen her husband over him, which is a really bad place to put yourself.
It is.
That's a triangle. You don't want to have. You don't want to have that triangle in your life.
No, and he has to sort of reframe his thinking about that, because that's the family. We're not really in that family.
That's right.
I'm not really a member of my daughter's family. I'm one step removed, and I have to kind of have to respect the little nuclear family.
Right. That's very healthy of you. You're not just giving advice. You're telling us how you deal in your life, and that's very grown up of you. I'm glad.
Thank you.
I'm glad that the woman we're asking advice of does it well in her own life. That's great. This is from Vicky. Vicky says, I find it hard to be understood by my grandparents. They come from a different generation and culture. I'm 30 years old and they don't understand why I'm not married and I don't have children, or that I might not even want them eventually. So how do I make my time with them less focused on them asking me about when I'm going to finally start my life, as they put it?
Boy,
that's funny.
It is. If I were she, I would say, let's talk about you. I'd like to hear more about, your childhood and what times were like that, is get them talking. In other words, I would just change the subject and say, I'm not really comfortable talking about those choices. I understand your concern, but I think I have it handled. But I would love to know more about you. Just take over the conversation, I think.
I think that's a good idea. Put it on them. But also the fact that they say, when are you going to start your life? As if
she doesn't have one.
I don't know Vicky, but I would imagine. Yeah, she's 30 years old. I'll bet she has a job, and she probably has a boyfriend or a girlfriend or something in her life that is a life. So it's kind of funny that they say, when are you going to start your life? Like the only life that there is worth having is being married, which is
exactly.
certainly not what we want to pass on to the world.
She can always fall back on that active listening technique where you say, I hear what you're saying, and I think you're concerned that I am somehow getting left behind in my life, or that and I really appreciate your worry, and just sort of mirror back the meta message that they're saying. And then don't answer the question, because you don't have to answer the question. You don't have to tell people what your plans are if it makes you uncomfortable. You just say, I hear your concern. I appreciate that you're thinking about my choices, and I'll get back to you.
Here's one from Judy. She says, hi, Marlo and Adair. I recently had my first child, and I'm now getting ready to return to work. I'm in the process of looking for a nanny, but I feel uneasy leaving my newborn with a total stranger. I'm considering asking my mother to take care of my baby, knowing that she will be safe and well taken care of. Should grandmothers be preferred caretakers to hiring a nanny?
I think all other things being equal, yes, absolutely. That's family, and they are deeply committed. It's not just a job, right? So and other things being equal, right? The training of the nanny, whether the grandmother is willing to find out, some progress in child rearing that's happened since she had babies, and not put babies down, on their tummies, that kind of thing. But I think grandmothers, if they're willing and they're capable, should certainly be preferred to any other kind of substitute caretaker.
Yes, but a lot of a lot of grandmothers today, including you and me, have jobs and work.
Well, that's what
and
I mean.
we have to have a nanny to take care of the. We'd have to have a nanny too.
Absolutely, the
To
grandmother
take
has
care
to.
of the children while we all went to work.
Yeah, the grandmother has to want to, because a lot of people become grandmothers when they're finally free of social demands, and they can write the book or go river
Exactly.
rafting. You know that.
Right. Grandmothers aren't who they were
No.
40 years ago. That's for sure.
So they're not necessarily going to step in with their hands to help. They might step in with a check.
Right.
Or with being there in emergencies.
Or they might step in sometimes.
Yeah.
Or sometimes,
Well,
every other week or something.
This is the kind of thing that the grandmother and daughter would talk about during this lunch I'm envisioning, where you say, well, I thought grandmothers
No,
help.
you're right. This is an interesting thing. This is from Isa. Can a grandparent's relationship with their grandchild be a second chance or a healing experience for a damaged relationship with their own children?
Oh, well, of course. I mean, it's one of the great appeals of being a grandparent. You get a second chance. You've seen how certain things that
Right.
you did resulted, adversely affected your adult child. In my case, I don't praise Ryan the way I used to praise her mother. If Ryan says, I'm really good at this, I say, you're trying very hard. Because my whole generation, we taught our kids to follow their bliss, and as a result, they all want to be screenwriters and work, late on Fridays. But I think it is a good chance to, be the parent that you didn't have time to be. Because you're freed of the
Right.
of responsibilities, and you can concentrate on doing what's part of your job, which is helping to shape that child. Okay?
Right. Here's a very good question for you from Teresa. This is a personal question, so I hope you don't mind
That's all right.
answering it. What's the biggest mistake you've made as a grandparent?
Where to begin? It's it's so easy to make mistakes. It's like one big mistake. I would have to say I took the kids skiing, and I got excited about putting Maggie on a sled. She was 3, and I let her go down a slope, and she went right into a picnic table. And she got this immediate
Oh, no.
goose egg, and I felt terrible.
And how do you have a daughter or a son?
I have a daughter. She was great. She was.
And was she good about it?
She was terrific. Yeah. At least when you do that, you're clearly in the wrong, which is it's kind of nice to be clearly in the wrong as opposed to just being annoying. Yeah.
Here's another question for you from SN. Hi, Adair. After having her new baby, my daughter keeps uploading his pictures and blogging about him on sites like Facebook. I express my concern and my disapproval. Do you think it's okay to blog about children and grandchildren?
Well, this is a tough one for me, because I wrote a column for 12 years, and a lot of it was about my kids. I think until they are old enough and have the language skills to object, it's perfectly okay, as long as you're not, you can change their names, but you're not putting out permanent information, because blogs do last forever. But yeah, I think parents have the right to blog about their babies and the smaller kids, and then when the kids get to be 5 or 6, it makes sense to ask them. To start being really careful.
Blogging is like today's having a wallet full of photographs.
It is, really, it is.
It's still about showing off. It's showing off the children that you have in your life and that you love so much. And so you can't help but be proud and want to show them. My brother and my sister are grandparents, and they're always sending me photos and videos of their grandchildren. And we live in different cities, and I love getting them.
Oh, yeah, I think it's wonderful. I did worry once when a friend of mine discovered that she was expecting her first grandchild, and she put it on Facebook. And that worried me, because, what if the pregnancy didn't end well? It seemed, that seemed a little dicey. But yeah, you do have to respect people's privacy as soon as they have a sense of privacy, which is not until, a few years in.
Right, right. Well, Adair, this is a good question. What do you think is the best thing about being a grandparent?
Oh, I think, well, it's, you know, it's almost impossible not to talk in cliches about being a grandparent because everybody sort of discovers it anew, and it's having all the joy of getting to watch somebody grow again, you know, to grow and change. You don't have the daily responsibility that can grind you down, especially if you're working. But just to watch them start to talk and then to read and watch them turn from babies to particular people, it's wonderful to be able to watch them change.
That's great. Yeah, I think so too. Since I was there for my step grandchildren's birth, we were right outside the room. We came in right after when they were born, and from that moment to now they're 13 and 14 years old. It's a real joy to see them grow to be wonderful young people with passions of their own and their personalities changing. One was shy, now that one is kind of a comedy person and fun and more confident. It's great to watch them develop. I think it's very exciting. Thank you so much, Adair Lara, for today. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
I want to be sure to have everybody buy your book, The Granny Diaries. Have you got a picture of it there? Why don't you hold it up? You got it there? No. Oh, good. There it is. Yep, there you go. The Granny Diaries. That's exciting. I adored my grandmother, and I'm excited to have had this chance to really learn a lot. And I know that all the people who wrote in, some are parents dealing with their parents being grandparents, and some are grandparents dealing with their children being parents. So it's a tricky new passage, and we all need advice for how to deal with it. So I'm so glad that you were with us today, and I'll see you next week on Mondays with Marlo.